Welcome to the B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro New Zealand, the podcast series dedicated to exploring technology-related insights with market-leading guests. I'm your host, Jamie Hall, and today we're talking to Fabien Degueldre, General Manager of Logitech New Zealand, and we're going to be covering the way of work, some unique trends in New Zealand, and eSports. Today's episode is brought to you by Logitech. With the ever-changing world we live in, Logitech's focus is on extending human potential in work and in play across gaming, music, personal workspace, and meeting rooms. Welcome along. It's awesome to have you here. I can't believe it. It's been a whole year since we did some short clips.
Yeah.
You were supposed to be our first guest, and you never made it.
Sorry. We had a last-minute trip to Wellington, seeing some customers, and I chose them over you.
Customers come first.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's actually really good to have you along. And like
Likewise.
I said, it was one of those things that we really wanted you in the first round. We talked about it so much in the build-up, and you'd actually been part of some of that planning.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Still have the original nodes, and still using them in the discussion we're having.
How good? Tell us a bit about yourself.
I've been in the industry for 17 years. Got my big start with Symantec. I'd been working in Hamilton, which is where I reside. I've been working in Hamilton for various companies like Navman, Yellow Pages. Prior to that, I was working in retail in Auckland. Met a girl from Hamilton, followed her, been there ever since. Turns out to be my wife and the mother of my children, so good decision.
That's good.
Good decision. Symantec, account manager, predominantly looking after Harvey Norman. Then moved to 2 Degrees. I was with them for a few years. Right at the beginning, they had like 3 stores. I came on board to manage the retail team, develop some sales strategies and trainings. Great time. Had a wonderful time there. And then moved from 2 Degrees to Belkin, so back in the fray, again, looking after a Harvey Norman and some of the usual suspects in the retail landscape in New Zealand. And then, about almost 6 years ago, now it'll be 6 years at the end of this year, I started working for Logi. It's been a really good run, good company, good culture. Still there.
Awesome. Logitech's quite glamorous. I like the whole setup that Logitech brings to the whole ecosystem. But even from your office space, very quite glamorous, I would say, on the technology side of things.
Oh, we've got a lot of cool products. That's all I'm going to say.
We've been through a few serious trends over the last few years as we're trying to find our feet in this hybrid working environment. How has that been from a Logitech perspective in your office? Have you noticed that from your team? Because I'm very mindful you were quite a hybrid setup even before all of that.
Yeah, we always have been, but I think we've settled on Monday, Tuesdays. We're in the office, we're together. We've got our catch-ups on Mondays, Tuesdays is your sales meeting days, and then, during the week it's up to everyone to figure out where they need to go and what they need to do. But I think it's, we've just done a bit of work. We've done some surveys not very long ago, and you'll see that 6 out of 10 people in New Zealand are hybrid workers these days.
6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
Makes sense. I think there's a lot of roles that have converted to hybrid that you never thought would have, and because we went through that situation, it's just released a lot.
Yeah, it's funny. Some people think hybrid applies to all roles. Funny anecdote from one of our retail partners who was interviewing someone for a full-time sales role, and they asked how many days they could work from home, which I thought was quite interesting for a retail job.
Yeah.
But that didn't work out. But it's interesting. I think New Zealand seems to be ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to hybrid. Even Australia's only 5 out of 10 people working in a hybrid model. So there's definitely, I think our landscape and the way we live our lives, our lifestyle, leads more to hybrid.
I think as Kiwis, we like that as well. I think we like that. We've got beaches everywhere. We're on an island. So we like to get to the beach. We like to be outside. So I think part of that hybrid kind of fits with that. I also think from what I've experienced, I've done a fair amount of travel through Ingram Micro, through work, that we've probably been a little bit more relaxed over here around our rules or our guidelines with businesses around how that looks, from a hybrid perspective. So, I do see it's a little bit more relaxed over here, but then that kind of suits the technology sets. We're innovators. We love to try new things. So I think it does suit us, but we certainly do see businesses still battling with trying to figure out what that right balance mix is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing that through some of the conversations we're having with some partners, trying to figure out whether they're going to have, full hot desking or a hybrid model or, I think a lot of the times they're sort of working off numbers as opposed to working from a human point of view, looking at how, people are going to have the best experience and also the best productivity opportunity at work. And I think that's still something that we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think so. I think technology in itself has had to change because it's not just an office-based piece of tech that you need. You need it to be able to operate in a cafe. You need to be able to operate in the office, at home. But then setups can be quite different between those locations as well. So to have the versatility, it's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned cafe actually because when we did our survey, we found that other than working from home, the second highest most place that people like to work from is cafe.
Interesting.
39%.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is, not that surprising, but still it's quite a high percentage.
Does the bar fit into that
category? Yeah, the bar does. Yeah, very proud of that number. Right. Yeah. This doesn't apply to Australia at all. This is a New Zealand thing. Yeah, 10% like to work from the bar, which, I encourage, good for you. So it's, again, talking to that lifestyle, we can have a drink and work at the same time.
One piece of technology that's been new for me since the COVID time, and I probably was a late adopter on this one actually, but was earbuds. Earbud technology for me, the audio was fine, but the noise cancelling was not great. Yeah. But in the last sort of 3-4 years, that's really lifted its game, and it's been actually really quite impressive. Yeah. So I'm probably in that group that would say, hey, I don't mind working from the cafe or the bar occasionally, although I find myself in the office a whole lot more now because of the technology we have here. Yeah. And the meeting room technology in particular, it has changed a lot. It doesn't look a whole lot different, but it's certainly from an experience perspective has changed. I know Logitech's been a key part and that's been a key innovation piece for you guys. What's been some of the focus areas from a meeting room solution set, and has it been considered around trying to draw people back in, or do you think that's just a byproduct or a side effect?
Yeah, look, I think, people working from home a lot during the COVID period, and they got used to how to, jump on Zoom or Teams or, whichever platform it was, and got really comfortable with it. And then they go back to the office and it wasn't that simple anymore. Some of the offices needed, you to bring your laptop in and plug it all in. We've actually been asked this from one of our end user customers that we've worked with. They're on a bit of a mission to try and make meeting rooms cool again. Because people are just avoiding using meeting rooms because they're just not sure what the experience is going to be. So, we've put in a lot of work to make sure that that's almost become like a one-touch, meeting start solution. So as long as you've invited the room, once you turn up, everything's done. You just click join and you're in the meeting, and that sort of takes away all that pain and that frustration. And I think that's something that, a lot of companies are still trying to, work on now, is developing those solutions so that it's an easier and more productive experience.
I think one of the things that frustrates me when I'm dialing in from somewhere else to the office is when you have got a big boardroom table and you're squinting at this tiny little thumbnail of like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people around a table. Audio sometimes is good, but I couldn't tell you who was in the room. Yeah, it's a tricky one sometimes.
It is, and look, we're putting a bit of work into making solutions so that people can feel more engaged into the meetings. So, for example, we introduced a product last year called Sight. It's a camera that sits in the middle of the boardroom, and the way it works is it works as a second camera to your main camera, so that when you've dialed in, you can see the people that are talking, and the camera's smart enough to pick up who's talking and who's not. I'm sure there's a little bit of AI involved in that solution.
Got to put the AI plug in there somewhere,
right? Got to put it in there. But it's it's just something that helps people who are dialing in feel like they can see the person who's speaking, they can see their visuals and potentially emotion, and sort of be a bit more engaged into the meeting. Whereas, to your point, if you're just staring from that camera and they're at the back and having their own little conversation, you're just out of it.
Yeah. One thing that someone told me, and another one of those probably YouTube things where you go, Is it?
Spend a lot of time
Is
on
it
YouTube.
legitimate? I do spend a little bit of time on
Yeah,
YouTube, to
okay.
be fair, maybe more than a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was a theory around when you're on an online meeting and you're looking through the camera. Naturally, as humans, we're trying to find the emotion. We're trying to find bits of information off the person's face, so that you can obviously change how you're talking, and you just naturally do that. But when you're zoomed out and you're looking at a boardroom table, you can't do that, but your body's and your brain's still trying to do it. So you actually end up getting a lot tighter, faster.
Right.
You're exhausted. I've certainly felt that, especially through the last few years, where you're just in front of a screen on video calls back to back to back. You get exhausted really quick. Typically, I get a lot of energy usually from talking to people and meeting people, but I found the adverse effect when using meeting rooms, and you can't get that face, or you can't really connect with the people that you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I can't remember the exact percentage, but when you're in a call like that, apparently you spend quite a bit of time looking at yourself to see how you look on the camera. And I think that becomes a distraction because you can't see what the other person looks like because they're talking amongst themselves. And so you're missing, that engagement. You're missing that bounce back, to your point, when you're face to face.
It's very true, and it's one of those concepts that I hadn't probably quite thought of, but I'll probably end up looking at that part of the screen myself. Yeah, is the hair right? Is the hair right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Mine's always right.
Yeah, the meeting room solution set, and you mentioned AI before. I'm going to go back there just for a brief moment, because I think we can talk about the hype of it, but in the reality, it's making the experience better. And that's what really matters. We can talk about all the feature sets and all these amazing bits and pieces, but for the meeting room, I think it's just the experience. So if AI can be injected into a meeting room solution and improve the experience, then that's a massive win. And that's probably also the key part that I see that's different between some of those older technology sets. You still walk into some businesses that have got older meeting room technology on the table or on the wall, and you know that it doesn't have that AI feature set, so maybe the audio's not right, that video's not tracking, or whatever it might be. So I've been really impressed with what's out in the market now. I guess the challenge is how do we keep pushing that forward without kind of losing the security aspects and all those other bits and pieces that go with it.
Yeah, and look, it's a great thing about Logitech. They're always innovating, always looking to create a solution. So we're not just sort of putting products out there. There's a lot of things that have come out in the last couple of years because of those situations. Another good example is Scribe, which is a whiteboard camera. When you're utilizing the whiteboard and you're writing something on there, it'll automatically detect your body and it'll grey it out so you're not blocking the view and people can see what you're writing. So again, I believe there's AI built in there that makes that adaptation. But yeah, it's great getting those products through, because when you show someone in the boardroom you've got the solution, they're like, oh, I want that.
Yeah, we've got that set up in our Wellington office, and you're looking straight through. Someone was showing me how it all works, and looking straight through their arm. It's like, how can I see the content on the board? It's like right through there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned before unique trends to New Zealand. You talked about cafes. That's one trend, but recently you guys were part of putting an article together with Idealog. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we had a solution come through, which is this one right here. It's called Casa, and it was designed around hybrid working. So allow people to turn up and set up their work desk.
I thought that was just in case for your tablet.
No. And you know what? Funny, I used this yesterday at home. I decided I was going to go and work outside because the weather was good. So it's a really easy setup. You pop up your keyboard, your trackpad, and your laptop sits in there, and you kind of got your little workstation all created for you. And the best thing about this is because you sit your laptop in here, it elevates the screen, so you're not having to sort of punch down and be on the screen and seeing things, and it's better for your posture. But it also just means
good reminder.
Also just means that people that even work from home, and don't have an office and they're working off the dining table, then you can quickly put away your workstation. It looks like the book. You fold it up and you can put it on the shelf and put it away, and it's out of the way. So when this came out, we wanted to see is it going to fit the New Zealand customer, and that's where we found that 60% of the workforce are hybrid workers. Almost 40% like to work from cafes. And again, you can take this wherever you go and adapt a solution.
Now, the millennial in me is coming out. I'm going to say I like the colours. Is that a...
Yeah. Three different colours, so depending on what mood you're in, you can choose the colour.
I like it.
Yeah.
Like it. Oh, very cool. And so your Idealog article, you polled Kiwis and Australians?
Yeah, we did a mixture of both just to see, because, we're similar in so many ways and then so different in others. And like I said, we like to work from bars and doesn't really feature for them, which I thought was quite surprising.
And I always love a good stat that differentiates us from our cousins over the ditch.
Absolutely.
We love them very much, but do love a good differentiation. So is there anything else that kind of stood out in there that was a bit different?
Yeah, we work an hour more than they do a week at least.
Okay.
Yeah. I know I do because, I work with an Australian team, and so, even though I start at 9 o'clock in the morning, they start 2 hours later, I'm still, working after 5 just to stay in line with them.
Just to keep up with the Australians. But they get a sleep in, so
yeah, it's true.
They get a good deal.
Yeah, I try and book meetings at 9 o'clock New Zealand time, but it never goes down well.
Fair enough. The Idealog I thought was quite well put together, and I liked that it referenced those differences and those parts. But we will share the link in the description for anyone that wants to check that further out later. But I thought that was really interesting. Now, keeping on the topic of trends, is there any other trends that you see in the market that's a bit different for New Zealand, or anything unique?
We don't tend to use webcams.
That's an interesting one. I scratched my head a little bit with that.
Yeah, the rest of the world was, stocking up on webcams during COVID to work from home. And I don't know, it's a New Zealand thing. The camera on my laptop is enough, and I don't need a webcam.
The HD webcam is I would have thought that you would just have them everywhere, but we just really, as Kiwis, we're happy with our...
Maybe it's a good enough sort of attitude. I don't know, like if you look at the difference in the quality and the features, you could see why you would. But I don't know, it just, New Zealand was the one country in the rest of the world. I kept having to explain this, and I kept having to have this discussion. I couldn't explain it. But it just didn't seem to be a thing here.
And we've certainly talked about this in years gone by and scratched our heads a little bit. Maybe it's one for the listeners and the viewers to let us know. Any thoughts, any ideas on that one? Help
Theories.
us out. Help us out.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on? Why are Kiwis not so interested in webcams like the rest of the world? I mean, we still do sell a fair amount of them. There's still a fair amount that go through. But when you look at it on a chart, there is clearly something with New Zealand.
Something's different.
Awesome. So I want to move and change topics a little bit now and talk about eSports for a couple of reasons. One, there's a particular type of eSport that I like myself, which is... No, yeah.
Didn't notice about you.
Racing, cars,
really?
Steering wheels. I think that's pretty awesome. But before we get to that part, eSports in general, especially in the education space, I wanted to zoom in on for a moment. I know you guys do a lot in there. But more importantly, I think there's a real opportunity to support people or youth that maybe aren't quite leaning towards that sport, maybe socially not a sport type person, have now got an opportunity to get into sports. Maybe it starts with esports, but then as a doorway and a bridge into other team sports as well.
Yeah, I think secondary schools in particular are trying to find their feet with esports. It's not easy. Because you're dealing with probably parents who already think, hey, my kid's already gaming a lot at home. They don't need to be gaming at school as well. Tertiary schools have definitely picked it up. Most of them will have a esports dedicated space, so you can go in there and game. You can take part in tournaments. But I think from a secondary school, there's a massive opportunity there because there's a lot of kids who aren't into sports, not really that good in class either, and are not feeling that engaged with the school and some of the other kids. So I think esports bring that element, which kind of flattens that line and gives everyone an opportunity to engage with each other. I think there's also an opportunity to educate so that we can try and improve the behaviours online. When you're playing a sports at school, they teach you about respecting the other team, they teach you about fair play. You don't get it online, and I think that's where you see some of the behaviours can be quite detrimental. But then I think also there is an opportunity to create pathways in New Zealand for gamers. At the moment, there really aren't any. So if you're any good at gaming, you're leaving. You're going to another country. And, we're currently working with one of our partners who are setting up a massive eSports event tomorrow. And, just looking at the amount of jobs that people had and setting up this event, there are so many opportunities, whether it's like production or event management. You could be a coach of a team. These days, esports and gaming is a lot more structured than it used to be. So if you're in an esports team, you don't just sit there and play games all day and eat cheese balls and drink bottles of Coke.
Yeah.
It's a regimented way to do things, so there's a schedule. You've got someone who comes in and, creates your meals for you to make sure you're eating healthy meals. You've got physical exercise, you've got team meetings, you've got media training. It's become like a professional environment. And I think there's a lot of really good Kiwi gamers that never get to that point because the pathways just aren't available.
And so Logitech in particular, you guys are investing in this area. Tell me a little bit about why. Like you've touched on it a little bit, but
Well, we sponsor a lot of esports teams around the world, and that's the people that talk to us about the solutions they're looking for. So when we create a gaming mouse or a headset, we're working with these guys and telling us what they need and what they're missing. What I guess I'm more focused on is the grassroots element. You've got young up-and-coming gamers that could have a future, and at the moment, they kind of get talked out of it. And it could be by parent, it could be by the fact that there's no pathways, as I mentioned earlier. But I know as a parent, my son would, play games for a few hours, come dinner time, you go and get him. Because I'm a gamer myself, I understand a little bit better, so I might walk in and go, okay, how much time has he got left? All right, finish this game, come and have dinner. Yep, no problem.
I think it's a really interesting point, because gaming, even for myself as a millennial, gaming for me, the online part wasn't really there, so you could pause any time. It's not the same. Like that's not how it is now. And to rip your youngest or your child away from the screen potentially mid-game of an online game could be catastrophic. But to us, if we don't have that understanding, it may not seem like quite a big deal, but it's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, again, part of that education piece is to also work with, parents and make them understand some of the things that go on online, make sure it's safe, that, we've got the right behaviors, but also help them understand how the games work. So like I said before, if he's playing Fortnite, for example, I go in and say, right, okay, there's 12 players to go. So when you finish this game, come and have dinner. Whereas the 95, I'll be like, dude, you've just started this game, let's go. Yeah. So it's a different conversations, sort of helping parents understand those situations. So instead of having this, discussion that's
a bonding moment, right?
Yeah, it's an opportunity to sort of have that more peaceful approach.
I really do like that concept, and I think there's still very polarizing opinions on esports, or more particular gaming, especially with children. And I heard something interesting, maybe YouTube, recently, where it was talking about, from a parenting perspective, setting the right boundaries so that it's a plus, not a minus or not a negative. And having those right boundaries means that, the Wi-Fi turns off at a certain time at night, but they still get that time to engage, because actually in a child's development period, that gaming is ticking a lot of boxes for them. It's giving them engagement with their friends, and a lot of it is digital these days, so it is really important. And there's a whole bunch of great factors, but it's when it's overdone, when it's like straight from home from school, all the way through to midnight, and they can't learn the next day, or it's impacting. That's a negative. But when you've got those boundaries set in place, and you're understanding a bit more about that gaming dynamic, it becomes a positive, and it's also a bonding opportunity with your children or with you.
Look, it's easier for me, obviously, because I dabble in gaming a little bit, so I sort of understand, some of the thoughts around it. But again, I'm going to reference my firstborn kid. He injured himself playing football, and he was out of commission for about 3 weeks. Had surgery and rehab and all those things, and knowing that his mates were home from school around 4, they'd schedule a time to all jump on and play together, and that was the way he socialised with them. That's how he knew what was going on. And I'd even be sitting there talking about, the project they got given. to catch up on notes and, of course, some gossip around school, obviously. But it was his way of socializing and still engaging with his mates. And, he'd come out feeling all kind of happy that he knows what's going on. So I think there's those elements that, as parents, we've not necessarily been used to. Whereas for them, I don't know, it creates a safe place for them to go and engage with their friends and have those conversations.
And go back to colours, I talked about millennial colours and things. There is some awesome kit out there with, neon lights, all the colour changing. I can only imagine how much you could spend and how many different items you can have to kind of enhance that gaming experience.
I think it was 4 years ago. Again, doing a little bit of research, we found that 48% of gamers are females. And up until that point, everything we'd always created was black keyboard, black mouse, black headset.
You can say that I only like the colour black.
To you, it's a personal decision. But it made us look at the way we're doing things and what we're putting out there, because people want to have that individuality, they want to have that colour, they want to create their own setups, and it's it's opened up a lot of doors as well. But I think it's interesting when we say people have got this polarizing view on gaming, when you think that at least 9 out of 10 homes in New Zealand has a gaming machine, console, system that's available. So we obviously are heavily into gaming. We just don't like to admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you?
Yeah. Oh, no, I'll admit it. I'll admit it.
Oh, you admit
yeah.
it. Okay, good.
But I'm probably siloed into a very set category. Although, to be fair, my children do use my PlayStation.
Right.
Thankfully, there's profiles these days that you can set up. So the Bluey game doesn't get suggested to me all the time, and all of the various bits that go along with that. But it's a great segue into the more esporting side and the athlete side of it. Not that I would class myself as an athlete, to be fair, but I do really love that whole eSports, eSIM, steering wheel setup, racing online. I've got several friends. Gran Turismo and PlayStation is kind of the platform that I've chosen because of that versatility to connect them with so many others at a casual level. But I know there's a lot that are into iRacing. Obviously, that's a fairly serious setup. You've got to spend a few dollars. Yep. But even in that Gran Turismo setup, you can get a really competitive setup and game going effectively with some really, really cool outcomes. And I've spent so many hours trying to perfect my racing craft. I probably think I'm a pro. Really, really slow as soon as you look at any global times. But I love it. And it's been great. It started probably more for me with COVID seriously because of that time you're at home. But I think for many it's been building for quite some time, and Logitech's been a core part of that with the G series wheels. Now you've got a full pro setup, which is awesome. I'm very blessed and honoured to have one in the office, to be fair. That's been great to have that there.
Which is where I found you when I arrived at the office.
Well, let's not go there. Let's not go there. Yeah, I do keep one eye on that leaderboard at all times. We've got a whiteboard leaderboard set up there, and I do like to try. No, not at all. No, not at all. But anyway, going back to athletes, not amateurs. Okay. Not amateurs. I think that whole piece is really interesting, and I know you support specific athletes. And it happens to be in the Gran Turismo game. I believe one of the people that you support is actually in the game. They've built them into the game. Yeah,
it's interesting the similarities between sports and esports. You watch your favorite football player, cricketer, whatever it is. And you might look at the equipment that they're using in the game and go, well, if I want to get to that level, I have to buy those shoes. I have to buy that. And I think with esports it's very similar, where you see a lot of F1 drivers are using sim solutions to improve, their times, because racing is a lot about memory. It's about, remembering that corner or at speed to take it at, and all those things. And so the range that we've brought out, you've got your G923, which is, your weekend warrior solution, but then you've got like the Pro range, which is direct drive, and then you can really customize it and make it your own. And
I don't want to geek out, but the load cell pedals for me it was a game changer from going from the G series. But anyway, it's not about me.
For me, it's the force feedback. Like we were just setting one up today, and I was saying to my colleague, I'm like, I just can't. I need more force feedback because it, just makes it easier to understand the road and the turn and which way the car's going to go. So I had to turn it up to get that feedback. And I think that's where, you talk to those professional drivers that are using sim, and that's what they look for. The gentleman you're talking about, he was racing off one of our wheels. He didn't have a setup. He was using a fold-out table and a desk chair, and he would just sit there and he'd race. But he was just doing amazing. He's been flown to Monaco a couple of times to compete on a global scale. And there's opportunities there, but you've just got to be willing to commit, to put in the time, to look for that little split-second improvement that you're not, currently getting.
The whole athlete concept, it's not just that way either, like that one way, starting, you're talking about starting on a table and going up through that. We're seeing athletes go the other way as well, and you touched on it very briefly. We've got people in F1 that will sim race right in their spare time to hone their skills. And
sometimes too much.
Yeah, and getting in trouble, right?
Getting in trouble with the team. Yeah.
But we also see, even in the America's Cup, which is on at the moment, which is really quite exciting. I saw a clip the other day.
YouTube?
Maybe. Yeah, it might have been. And they had a Logitech wheel sitting in the corner of the room and clearly using it for their simulation setup. And I thought this is where it really starts to blend. They were probably two completely separate things that now the lines are blurred, and to be a professional athlete at the top of your game in, what we would class as, full-blown real-life sports, you need to have that sim there. And then vice versa, we're seeing people that are in sim move across and start, racing real cars, real tracks, and be competitive and being competitive right out of the gate, like straight away. And then even movies written about it, right? So there's the Gran Turismo movie. And it's interesting, there's somebody that cameos in that, Super GT, that actually is a full-time, that's actually real. Like he is a gamer, he is a racer at the same time, but that's completely blended for him. And this year he's been racing on the Nürburgring in real life, full 24-hour racing, doing all this really cool stuff. And it wouldn't have been possible without that sim piece combining into the real world. So I just think it's super, super cool.
Oh, it's so realistic. I mean, we also do flight sim. And if you've got, flight simulator, you can, clock some time in for, your training. So you don't have to, have access to a plane, which, isn't that easily accessible. So, there's so many solutions out there, and it just, it comes down to what you like. We also have a farm simulator.
I was about to bring that up. Yeah. No, it's not, but I'd love to try one time. I think I saw it at Field Days once, and they had a full simulator set up for farming.
Yeah, it looks interesting. It's interesting. I tried it for a little bit. I was like, so just work in the fields. Yeah. Okay. Got bored of it pretty quickly, but there is people out there that absolutely love it.
It's really cool. Now, I'm going to change now to a segment that we're running with everybody that comes through for the B2B Tech Talk.
Right.
Now, what's called is 5 and 5. I'm going to ask you five questions. You've got 5 seconds to answer each one. These questions will be the same for all guests, so I'm not picking just on you.
Okay.
But I'm looking for obviously your unique answer to them.
Appreciate it. Okay.
All right, first question for you. What book, app, or show would you miss on a deserted island?
The Office.
The Office.
The Office. Both American and British. Love them both.
I do like the American one personally, but they're both really good.
I think the office manager is a evil genius. He behaves a certain way to make everybody else in the team, lift their games to make up for him.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
I think there is some parallels to real life in there as well somewhere with some of us in the office world, so it's really good. All right, second question. Your favourite movie featuring AI?
Oh, look, it's going to be Back to the Future. I don't know if it's got AI. It must do. It must do. It's my favourite movie of all time, so it has to be Back to the Future. And look, you can't time travel and re-enter and not crash into buildings and walls without having some sort of, system there that helps you.
That makes sense. I thought you were going to say Terminator, but, that makes sense.
I love it also, but not as much.
All right, question number 3. What does your social media algorithm think you're obsessed with?
Oh, barbecuing and travelling.
Nice.
Yeah. Very keen to travel again, like probably most Kiwis. And barbecuing is just a weird obsession.
Social media algorithms are dangerous. You click on one thing and then all of a sudden your algorithm changes shape. It's
particularly difficult when you're trying to lose weight and you keep seeing this food come up on your feed. It's like, oh my God, it's torture.
All right, question number 4. What piece of outdated tech do you miss the most and why?
You know, it's weird, but I miss DVDs. And I miss, going to the store and spending a bit of time and curating a little, set to bring home and watch together. I feel like these days we just, browse aimlessly through Netflix and, waste 45 minutes trying to find something, and then finally we find it's like, it's not that good. So yeah, I feel like that whole experience of, going out looking for a DVD, that's missing for me.
I hadn't really thought about that, but I think you're onto something there. There was something special about, and there was those deals you get, like 5 moves for $5 or whatever it was, and you come back with all these.
Yeah, and then you see the covers and go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, and the other thing that I miss, special features. You don't seem to get those anymore. Used to get them on DVDs, watch a documentary about how they made it. It was pretty cool. Don't get that anymore.
Not really. I think
unless you look on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube, yes.
Yeah.
Disney Plus, I think, does a great job of that with the Star Wars collections. But you're right. I haven't really seen that much else. Much other areas. All right, last question. If you could share one game-changing productivity tip to save time, what would it be?
I attended Spark's Future State event. And it was a gentleman there that shared what they implement in their business. And it was having a focus day, hopefully every week or every fortnight, and a focus week, either monthly or quarterly. And I've implemented that. And what it really does, it allows me to cut out some time on my schedule to make sure that I'm looking at that big idea or that big analysis. Whereas, those are the things you put off because you're always so busy. But having that time dedicated in my calendar, I make sure I don't book anything else over the top of it. That's really helped me, look at some of those things that I normally put off.
Awesome. I think that was over 5 seconds, but we'll let it in. No, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, we were gutted that we couldn't make you as part of that, put you in as part of those clips, but it's so great to have you as part of the first full-length podcast that we've put together. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you. Loved it.
Thanks for joining us today, and a special thank you to Logitech New Zealand for sponsoring this episode. If there's any guests or topics that you would like featured, connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find the links in the description. Thanks for having us, and we'll see you next time.